I woke up to find myself stranded on a deserted island with the campus beauty. She was trembling in fear. Don't come over. I've trained in Taekwondo. I ignored her and turned to leave. 3 minutes later, she came chasing after me in tears. Yifeng, wait for me. I'm afraid of the dark. Late at night, she was shivering from the cold but stubbornly insisted she wasn't. I said this island is full of drowning ghosts, and female ghosts specifically target girls with weak yang energy. Before I even finished speaking, she threw herself straight into my arms. Then a splash of cold water smacked right into my face, and I jolted upright. Everything around me was pitch black. Above my head was a sky full of stars, beneath me a damp beach. Cold seawater washed over me from time to time, soaking through my clothes. What is this place? I stared blankly at the endless ocean before me, my head feeling like someone had clubbed it with a stick. A shipwreck. The memory suddenly came flooding back. I'm a finance major, and during graduation season, all the teachers and students boarded a cruise ship to attend a finance lecture at sea. Then we ran into a storm, and the cruise ship capsized. I have no idea how my classmates are doing now. I felt around in my pockets. My phone and wallet were gone. Only a lighter was left. The sea was in front of me, and behind me was a dark, dense forest. Looks like a deserted island. Cold. The sea wind cut into the cracks of my bones like knives. I was cold and hungry, and my throat was so dry it felt like it was on fire. But I didn't panic. First, save myself, then wait for rescue. Just as I was about to head to the edge of the woods to pick up some dry branches and start a fire, the corner of my eye caught sight of someone lying beneath a reef. In the moonlight, the person was wearing a loose white top, and the seawater had rolled the clothes up a large section, revealing a slender waist. It was a woman. I walked over slowly. If she was beautiful, then with a lone man and a lone woman on this deserted island, feelings might grow over time, and later we could depend on each other to survive. Before I even got close, the woman suddenly let out a scream and sprang upright. She looked around in a daze, shaking her head hard. Her soaking wet clothes clung to her body, and when she shook her head, the curves in front of her quivered along with it. She was probably still not fully back to her senses. A shipwreck. I got washed onto the beach. What am I supposed to do, Sob? She muttered in a fluster, her voice thick with tears, looking utterly pitiful. The voice sounded very familiar. I recognized her. Lu Ting, the finance department's campus beauty, from an extremely rich family. Rumor had it her father was in maritime trade. Beautiful and rich, too. A whole bunch of guys at school treated her like a goddess, discussing her passionately in private. Some even hid her photos under their blankets. What a bunch of animals. I didn't expect to run into her on this deserted island. I quickly walked over. Lu Ting, you're still alive. She gave a startled shudder and turned around in a panic. And when she saw me, she backed away like a frightened rabbit. You? Who are you? It wasn't her fault for not recognizing me. We weren't in the same class, and there were several hundred graduates in this year. There was no way she could know them all. I'm Yifeng. I took 2 steps forward. Yifeng. She thought hard for a moment, seeming to have some vague impression, but we weren't familiar. You. Are you human or a ghost? She kept backing away. Probably a lot of people had died in the shipwreck, so she suspected I was a ghost. Of course I'm human. If you don't believe me, touch me. I'm warm and have a heartbeat. I pulled open my shirt, exposing my chest. Even if you're human, don't come any closer. She clutched her clothes tightly and tugged down the hem that had been rolled up. The two of us are both disheveled right now, and there's no one else on the island. What if you try to take advantage of me? I wouldn't be able to beat you. She did have reason to be afraid. Back at school, a bunch of guys secretly took photos of her. Now she and I were stranded on a deserted island together, a lone man and a lone woman. In person, she was far more alluring than in photos. Back off first. She had a slim figure, with all her curves in exactly the right places, sexy and charming. Why should I back off? It's not like this island belongs to your family. I was a little speechless. The campus belle is way too confident. What makes her think every man has to be interested in her? I never liked her back in school. I'm a practical person, rather than fantasizing about a fairy in the sky. It's better to find someone down to earth. Yifeng, don't come over. Otherwise I'll. She looked down at her soaked, disheveled clothes and grew even more flustered. I stood a few meters away, quietly watching her. Or else what? I'll beat you up. I've trained in Taekwondo. I'm really good at it. I could take on several of you by myself. She puffed out her chest and raised her tiny fists, which had no intimidation at all. TCH. I was disdainful. With those skinny arms and legs of hers, she couldn't even kill a rabbit. I kept walking forward. Yifeng, I really do know Taekwondo. She struck a stance, but she still couldn't scare me. With that little strength of yours, you couldn't even kill a chick. I'm warning you, don't think that just because we're stranded on a deserted island, you can start getting ideas about me. She bit her lip and held her body ramrod straight. I'd rather crash into a rock or jump into the sea and drown than let you take advantage of me. Fine, if you don't need help, then forget it. I turned and walked away, but I was sure she would definitely follow. Under the moonlight, I headed quickly toward the forest. In the middle of the night, Lu Ting would definitely be afraid of the dark and of ghosts if she were alone, and she had no ability to survive on her own. She wanted to get rid of me? Impossible. Sure enough, cautious footsteps came from behind me. She had followed, but kept her distance. The cold wind cut to the bone, and I curled up as much as I could as I walked forward. Thinking of the towering waves when the cruise ship met with disaster, I still felt lingering fear. I hope my parents still don't know about this. I'm the only son in my family, born in a remote ancient village in the south, where everyone values martial arts, so I'm pretty good at fighting. When I reached the edge of the forest, I started gathering dry firewood. I didn't dare go in too deep. There were too many venomous snakes and fierce beasts in the woods at night. After collecting a bundle of dry wood, I found an open area and lit a fire. A little over 10 minutes later, a blazing fire was burning and the temperature around us rose at once. A dozen or so meters away, Lu Ting stood by a rock, her bright eyes fixed intently on the fire. She was very cold and wanted to come warm herself too, but didn't dare. Lu Ting, aren't you cold? I am not cold. She talked tough, but her body was curled into a ball. Her clothes were still wet and clinging to her body, and her little face was pale from the cold, her lips purple. Stop forcing yourself. Come over and warm up by the fire. I'm not cold. It'll be fine as long as I hold out until dawn. Her voice trembled, and her whole body was shaking. Even if you can endure it, aren't you afraid of ghosts? There are no such things as ghosts in this world. She didn't believe me. Of course there are, otherwise what would Taoist priests and exorcist masters be for? Even if there are, this is a sea island. There's no morgue or crematorium here, so there probably aren't any ghosts. Heh. I smiled. You may not know this, but isolated islands at sea have the most ghosts. The souls of those who die in shipwrecks all gather on such islands. You're a woman, your young energy is weak, so it's very dangerous. Yifeng, you're too awful, scaring me. Shoo, quiet. I raised my index finger and lowered my voice. They're here. Who's here? She looked around nervously. Don't make a sound. The ghosts from the sea are here. Listen to the sound of the sea wind and the eerie wind whistling through the forest. Countless vengeful spirits are closing in around us. Whoosh. A gust of cold wind suddenly blew past. Lu Ting finally couldn't hold it together anymore. She let out a scream and took off running, rushing toward the fire. Ouch! Just as she was about to reach it, she accidentally twisted her ankle and pitched forward. Careful! I hurried forward and caught her in my arms. Her soft body filled my embrace, and a burst of fragrance rushed to my nose. With me here, don't be afraid. She suddenly shoved me away and limped over to the fire and sat down. This is bad. One look at her expression and I knew what she was thinking. With her ankle twisted, if I wanted to do something, she wouldn't even be able to run away. She bent down to rub her ankle, but as soon as she bent over, she immediately sat back up straight. She probably felt that angle was too likely to expose herself. Yifeng, we're both people in distress, so we should help each other. She spoke up. Forced love bears no fruit. Feelings can't be forced, right? You want to have a proper talk with me? She looked a little embarrassed, and my smile made her uneasy. How about we make 3 rules? Swear you won't mess around, and as long as your requests aren't too excessive, I'll try my best to satisfy you. I smiled. Why would you think of swearing over something like this? That's so childish. You say I'm childish? You're the childish one, using ghost stories to scare me. She was angry, but also a little secretly pleased. She had just hinted that I could make certain not too excessive requests, and probably thought I hadn't noticed. If making me swear isn't childish, then what is? No one has ever said that about me. I'm so mad. That's because you think you're smarter than you are. We started bickering. I once read a book about human nature. If you want to get close to a woman, the best way isn't to flatter and fawn over her, but to negate her and engage her in harmless arguments. If you only cater to and please her, it'll instead arouse wariness and disdain. Doubt and denial, on the other hand, can stir up their competitive spirit. After arguing for a few lines, she got so mad she didn't want to talk anymore. She suddenly clutched her ankle. It hurt. Are you okay? None of your business. It has nothing to do with you. Her resentment still hadn't faded. It didn't have anything to do with me in the first place. I picked up a stick and threw it into the fire. You're trying to piss me off to death. This is all your fault, and yet you're still so heartless. Yi Feng, you. If you want to stay alive, talk less. What do you mean? Talk less and conserve your strength. After saying that, I closed my eyes and sat by the fire, ignoring her. She was waiting for me to speak, but I deliberately wouldn't. Let her figure it out herself. Women are curious by nature. Sure enough, the way she looked at me changed, as if she couldn't see through me anymore. 2 hours later, our clothes had all dried. I stayed silent for a full 2 hours, and she finally couldn't hold back anymore. Why won't you talk to me? Do I have to talk to you? She was speechless. Your clothes are dry. Get some rest early. Aren't you going to rest? I'll keep watch to prevent wild animals from attacking. This is the seaside. Where would wild animals come from? Fire can keep wild animals away too. I didn't say anything. After waiting 2 minutes and seeing that I still wouldn't reply, she grew a little depressed. This man is getting harder and harder to figure out. Yi Feng, I'm hungry and thirsty too. Can you get something to eat and drink? She smiled apologetically, probably feeling that this request was a bit excessive. Go to sleep. If you fall asleep, you won't be hungry anymore. She pursed her lips. Even if the request was excessive, he should at least answer directly or offer a few comforting words. Fine, then I'll sleep. Just as she lay down, she sat up again. Forgot to tell you, if anyone comes near me while I'm sleeping, I'll hit them. I smiled casually and didn't respond. She immediately felt awkward, like she was transparent in front of me. She lay down with her back to me, then felt her back wasn't safe, so she turned over, but that still didn't feel safe either. She rolled around, constantly turning over. You're pretty interesting when you sleep, like you're hugging someone and rolling around on the ground. She smiled awkwardly, crossed her hands over her chest, and finally fell asleep quietly. Crackle, crackle. The firewood occasionally made popping sounds. I sat quietly, keeping a careful watch on the surroundings. Even with the fire, I still had to stay on guard. I glanced at Lu Ting not far away, the beautiful and charming silhouette of the campus belle facing me. I didn't walk over. A man can be flirtatious, but he should also have grace. Time passed bit by bit. In the east, the sun rose. Golden sunlight spread across the sea. The sunrise over the ocean was beautiful, but unfortunately, I had no mind to appreciate it. My mouth was dry and parched, and my stomach was growling with hunger. Day broke. I stood up, ready to go into the woods to look for water and food. Lu Ting was sleeping soundly. She turned over and rolled toward me, ending up flat on her back at my feet. A slender figure, a beautiful sleeping posture. I looked down at her from above. She happened to open her eyes. Didn't we agree not to do anything inappropriate? She covered her front and quickly rolled over, then got up into a half squat. Your sleeping posture is really beautiful. That belt should be a designer brand, right? I smiled and turned to leave. Belt. She hurriedly stood up to check and found that the belt hadn't been touched, then let out a sigh of relief. It's daylight. I'm going into the woods to look for fresh water and food, and you're coming with me. But my foot hurts. She touched the ankle she sprained last night. A hurting foot won't kill you, but no food will. She was so angry she was about to explode. Do you have any sympathy at all? You can stay behind if you want. If a wild beast comes, you can get up close and personal with it. Beauty and the Beast, that would make quite a pretty picture too. Hey. She held her face in fear, quickly picked up a stick to use as a cane, and limped after me. When we reached the edge of the forest, I picked up a sturdy stick that fit nicely in my hand. She held out her hand, thinking I was going to give it to her as a cane. This stick is not bad. It can be used for self-defense. I nodded in satisfaction and went into the woods holding the stick. Her hand froze in midair. Damn Yi Feng. Can't he see her ankle is injured and she's having trouble moving? She angrily picked up a stick from the ground and followed behind. This forest was huge, and in the distance were rows of green mountains. As long as we keep heading downhill, we should be able to find a water source. When it rains, water flows downward and gathers somewhere into a pool. She followed a few meters behind, keeping her distance. After walking for half an hour, she was exhausted. I deliberately didn't look back at her. She was so wary of me before, and now she wants me to care about her? Ouch! She deliberately cried out in pain, trying to get my attention. I kept walking as if I hadn't heard. Ouch! The sound got even louder. She simply sat down under a tree and refused to walk anymore, looking extremely aggrieved. What's wrong? Does it hurt badly? I turned around. She looked so aggrieved she was about to cry. You only now realize I'm hurting? I walked over, crouched down, and grabbed her ankle. What are you doing? She was nervous to death, afraid I might do something to her in the dense forest. Hold still. With one hand, I held her ankle, and with the other, I supported the sole of her foot, then applied force at the same time. Crack. Ah, it hurts so much. Yi Feng, you're too awful. You made me sprain my foot, and now you're making it hurt even more. Tears streamed down her face from the pain, and she wished she could smash the stick over my head. But she didn't dare, afraid of brutal retaliation. Get up and try walking. She stood up, took a few steps, and froze. Huh, it doesn't hurt anymore. Hee hee, Yi Feng, thank you. It was nothing. I picked up the stick and prepared to keep going. Since you can do that, why didn't you help me last night? You made me hurt all night and endure the pain for so long while walking. You're the one who's injured, not me. I have no obligation to set your bone. After saying that, I turned and walked into the woods. I. She trembled all over with anger. Because she was so furious, she forgot to keep her distance and quickly caught up. Classmate Yi Feng, I'm very angry. If you're very angry, then don't talk. Talking won't help you vent. My voice was icy. She rolled her eyes and nearly fainted from anger. Damn Yi Feng, sooner or later I'll make you pay. I kept heading downhill the whole way. The algae and other plants in the forest suddenly became more abundant, and the air was heavy with moisture. There was water nearby. Splash, 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 the sound of spring water. I quickly strode out through the scrub, and ahead was a mountain spring, the clear water gathering into a stream. And the stream flowed into a pool, a pond of more than a dozen square meters. Great. I washed my hands clean and scooped up the spring water to drink deeply. The sweet, clear spring water flowed down my throat and through my whole body, instantly refreshing me and restoring quite a bit of my strength. Lu Ting was also gulping water beside me. After drinking, she regained her energy. Good water, right? Drink more, recover your strength, and then we can do something together. Do something? She looked at me warily. Do what? Didn't you say I could make a request? I thought about it all night and felt that the two of us really do need to do something. I slowly walked over. She covered the front of her body, trembling. But her expression looked like she had mentally prepared herself. As long as it wasn't too excessive, she would reluctantly satisfy me. Bang, bang, bang. Suddenly, the sound of a beast running came from the jungle ahead. Quick, climb up the tree. I shouted urgently. She froze for a moment. Climb a tree? Could it be that Yi Feng wants to do that kind of thing up high? I didn't expect him to have that kind of fetish. There's a wild beast. Get up the tree. She came to her senses. So it was to take shelter. I thought he was looking for some excitement. But I can't climb trees. Then find a vine, tie it around your neck, and hang yourself from the tree. Oh, she actually pulled down a vine, made it into a loop, and was about to put it around her neck. Wait, that's not right. She reacted, so angry she wanted to spit blood. Damn it, I got tricked again. I shook my head. Sometimes the school beauty really is simple-minded, so silly she's kind of cute. Roar, roar, roar. The beast's roars drew near. A dark mass shot out of the grass. Quick, up the tree. I shouted and charged forward. Oh my God, she screamed in fright. Seeing me run off, she felt so desperate she wanted to cry. Yi Feng is too selfish. He just abandoned her when danger came. Driven by fear, she used both hands and feet and actually climbed 2 meters high. Roar. A pitch-black thing charged out of the woods. At that instant, I rushed onto a rock, planted one foot on the stone, spun like a dragon turning, and viciously thrust out the wooden staff in my hand. Huh. Bursting out with all my strength, returning dragon thrust, my ultimate move. Bang. The green steel wood slammed heavily into the beast's head. The beast immediately collapsed to the ground, gasping and barely alive. It turned out to be a wild boar. It wasn't very big, around 100 gene, and there were several deep claw marks on its body, 2 of them so deep you could almost see its organs. It was probably attacked by some fierce beast and, after luckily breaking free, fled here. It wasn't going to survive. Yi Feng, it's a wild boar. Great, we have meat to eat. Lu Ting was so excited that she quickly started climbing down from the tree. But a branch snagged the front of her clothes, tearing open a button and pulling the hem way up, exposing her slim waist completely. Yi Feng, her face was bright red, and she could neither go up nor come down. If she tugged hard, her clothes would definitely tear. What's wrong? I walked over. Don't come over. She hugged the tree and lowered her head to look at the front of her clothes. That damned branch was still hooked on them. All right then, you hang there a little longer. Be careful not to fall and have a branch slice open your belly. Woo-woo. She was even more frightened. If she fell, those forked branches really could slice open her belly. Yi Feng, you'd better come over. So what if I'm exposed? That's still better than having my belly sliced open. I climbed up the tree and looked down from above. This branch really got hooked at just the right time. I gently pulled the branch away and held her as we slid down the tree. Once on the ground, She quickly turned around to fix her clothes. Check carefully to make sure you're not hurt. After saying that, I walked toward the wild boar. The claw marks on the boar didn't look like they were from a tiger, nor from a bear. What kind of beast injured it and left such deep marks? What are you looking at? She walked over, her clothes fixed now, though she still felt a little embarrassed thinking about what had just happened. This forest is very dangerous. We need to get back to the seaside quickly, but we don't have anything to carry fresh water in. If we leave here, we'll die of thirst. I have a way. Nearby, I found a hollow tree, snapped it off with force, then found a suitable piece of wood to make a plug and seal the broken end. We made several tree canisters and filled them all with water. Then I knocked the wild boar unconscious and carried it on my shoulder, while she carried the tree canisters, and the two of us returned the way we came. An hour later, we got back to the beach. Waves surged across the vast sea. I threw the wild boar onto the ground. After carrying something weighing over 100 Gene for an hour, my shoulders were sore and aching. I'm exhausted. She set down the tree canisters, drenched in sweat. Are you okay? Oh wow, the sun must be rising in the west. You actually know how to care about someone. She mocked. After all, I've seen your body, so I have to take responsibility for you. Woo woo woo. She remembered what had happened just now when she was hanging from the tree and felt terribly upset. I'm hungry. After a brief moment of sadness, she changed the subject. It seemed she didn't want to bring it up again. I found a sharp black stone by the sea, high in iron content. Although it wasn't as good as a kitchen knife, it could barely cut wild boar meat. She stoked the fire even stronger. Half an hour later, I cut off 2 pieces of wild boar meat, skewered them on wooden sticks, and roasted them over the charcoal fire. I'm starving to death. Finally, there's meat to eat. She looked at the sizzling, oily meat and clenched her little fists excitedly. Eat more. Once you're full, it'll be easier to get things done. I looked at her, my eyes bright. Lu Ting widened her eyes, her mouth forming an O, probably frightened. What are you going to do? Lu Ting asked cautiously. After we finish eating, we're going to build a thatched hut and then enjoy our world as a couple. Without a house, whatever we do would be inconvenient, sigh? Yifeng sighed. Lu Ting pursed her lips, still feeling unsafe. An hour later, a delicious aroma filled the air. The wild boar meat was finally done roasting. Looking at the wild boar meat roasted to a golden brown, Lu Ting couldn't help drooling. It's cooked, eat. Yifeng picked up a wooden stick and handed the skewered wild boar meat to Lu Ting. Thanks. Lu Ting smiled sweetly, then reached out to grab the wild boar meat. Careful, it's hot. Yifeng reminded her. Lu Ting burned her hand and quickly pulled it back, then said angrily, I already got burned, and only then did you give me that fake reminder. You did it on purpose. Who told you to grab the wild boar meat with your hand instead of holding the wooden skewer? Stupid. Yifeng said. I was too hungry, so my brain wasn't working. Lu Ting was really funny when she talked, and very cute too. After waiting a minute, and seeing that Yifeng still hadn't comforted her, Lu Ting huffily took the wooden skewer and then carefully ate the wild boar meat. The wild boar really was roasted deliciously. Although there were no seasonings, it still tasted great, rich but not greasy. The two of them ate a lot of wild boar meat. After they were full, Lu Ting stood up and asked, what should we do next? We'll figure out a way to cure this wild boar meat to keep it from spoiling, and then build a thatched hut to shelter us from the wind and rain. Yifeng said, but we don't have anything to make sea salt, and sea salt made by simple methods is also quite toxic. Lu Ting felt deeply worried. Sea salt needs to be processed before it can be eaten. Otherwise, it's highly toxic. But processing sea salt by digging channels to bring in water, filtering, and drying it in the sun would take far too much labor, not to mention there were only 2 of them. Let's first make some sea salt, use a small amount of it to cure the meat, and then make bacon by smoking it thoroughly. As long as we turn the wild boar meat into smoked cured meat, it can be preserved for a long time. Yifeng suggested. Back when he lived in the countryside, the villagers all used this method to cure bacon. But we don't have an iron pot, so we can't boil seawater. How are we supposed to make sea salt? Lu Ting asked. First, make a small pond and pour a little seawater into it. Once the seawater dries up in the sun, there will be sea salt. Yifeng got up and left, preparing to look for a suitable spot on the beach to dry sea salt. Choosing the location is very important. If it's all sandy ground, it will leak easily, and if it's far from the shore, it will be hard to transport seawater. Lu Ting followed behind Yifeng, and the two found a rocky area, which just so happened to have a suitable place for drying salt. After 2 hours of hard work, they finally filled it with seawater. If nothing unexpected happened, there should be sea salt by noon tomorrow. Next, Yifeng prepared to build a thatched hut. When trying to survive by the sea, a thatched hut is very important. Not only can it shelter them from wind and rain, but it can also protect against attacks from some wild beasts. Yifeng, I don't know how to build a thatched hut. Do you? After reaching the edge of the forest, Lu Ting smiled apologetically, afraid that Yifeng would say she was dumb or stupid or something like that. You grew up in a big city, and your family is wealthy, so of course you don't know how to build a thatched hut. But I do, Yifeng said. Lu Ting had thought Yifeng would call her stupid, or take a few jabs at her, but she hadn't expected that this time Yifeng didn't put her down. Then I'll be responsible for finding wood, and you'll be responsible for building the thatched hut, Lu Ting said. Can you handle it? Yifeng looked at Lu Ting. With that frail body of hers, could she carry wood and find thatch? Humph, you're actually looking down on me. Miss Me is very capable. You just don't know it yet. Lu Ting refused to accept it and didn't want Yifeng to look down on her. She rolled up her sleeves and searched for wood, thatch, and vines at the edge of the forest. Since it was too dangerous in the forest, the two of them didn't dare go in casually. While Lu Ting searched for materials at the forest's edge, Yifeng moved stones on the beach. He planned to build a thatched hut made from a mix of stone and wood. This kind of house would be sturdier, and ordinary wild beasts wouldn't be able to crash through it. The two worked separately, but in cooperation. Although Lu Ting was very tired, sweating all over, she still gritted her teeth and persevered, because she didn't want Yifeng to despise her. And even less did she want Yifeng to think she was holding him back. Although this rich young lady was born into a wealthy merchant family, deep down, she had an unyielding spirit. 3 hours later, Yifeng had used countless large stones to build a stone house of 10 square meters and 1.5 meters high, but above 1.5 meters he would have to use wood. Because if he built it several meters high with stone, it would easily collapse, which would be too dangerous. After Lu Ting carried over a lot of wood, thatch, and vines, she was drenched in sweat and didn't even have the strength to speak. Yifeng, are these enough? Lu Ting asked. Enough. If you still have the strength, you can look for dry firewood at the edge of the forest. After I finish building the thatched hut, I'll smoke the wild boar meat first, and tomorrow I'll cure it with sea salt, so it won't spoil tonight, Yifeng instructed. If that wild boar isn't dealt with now, by the time they have sea salt tomorrow, it will definitely have rotted already. Oh, Lu Ting wiped off her sweat and staggered toward the forest, but before she had taken more than a few steps, she collapsed limply to the ground. What's wrong with you? Yifeng quickly asked. I'm fine. Lu Ting shook her head. If you can't manage, then rest for a while. Stop pushing yourself, Yifeng said, unable to bear it, afraid the campus belle would wear herself out. You're the one who can't manage, Lu Ting retorted. Your legs are already weak from exhaustion, and you have no strength left. Stop forcing yourself and rest. Your legs are weak, humph. Lu Ting refused to admit it, but she sat down on the beach to rest for a while. Yifeng shook his head and smiled. This rich young lady was too stubborn. She was already this exhausted and still being hard-headed. But after this incident, Yifeng liked Lu Ting even more. If it were an ordinary beauty, she probably wouldn't even be able to lift a single piece of wood, or would only know how to cry and act spoiled. After resting for half an hour, Lu Ting got up and prepared to look for dry firewood. Yifeng, today this young lady, will show you what I'm capable of. Don't underestimate us women in the future, because we women are no worse than men, Lu Ting said proudly. I wasn't underestimating women, nor was I underestimating you, Yifeng said while building the hut. From the look in your eyes, I can tell you despise me, humph. After the corners of her mouth curled up slightly, Lu Ting quickly walked toward the edge of the forest. Be careful, and whatever you do, don't go into the forest. Looking at her departing figure, Yifeng reminded her with concern. Got it. This beauty still wants to live to 99, so I won't go into the forest and take risks. From outside the forest came Lu Ting's pleasant, melodious voice. The sun in the sky gradually sank westward. After a busy day, Yifeng finally finished building the hut. It was a hut built from a mixture of stone and wood. About 10 square meters, enough for 2 people to live in. Looking at this hut on the island, Lu Ting smiled brightly. At last, there was a place to shelter from the wind and rain. Feeling relieved, she raised her slender hand and gently wiped the sweat from her forehead. Stranded on a deserted island and building this hut reminds me of a TV drama, Yifeng said. What TV drama? Lu Ting asked. The Heaven Sword and Dragon Saber. Zhang Wuji's parents became husband and wife because they were stranded on a deserted island. Yifeng joked. Lu Ting rolled her eyes and said, I only know my love from the star. Let's think of a way to save ourselves instead, like preparing a large number of live branches or writing SOS on the wide beach. SOS is the international distress signal. As long as we write these 3 letters on the beach, if an airplane passes over this area and sees the distress signal left on the beach, it will immediately begin rescue operations. The reason for preparing live branches is that this kind of wood still contains moisture. Once thrown into the fire, it will produce a large amount of black smoke, which can send a distress signal to ships at sea. Leave these things to you. I'll prepare the smoked wild boar meat first, Yifeng said. Okay, let's divide the work and cooperate. Lu Ting nodded and said. After discussing it, Yifeng returned to the seaside and continued picking up sharp stones to slice the wild boar meat piece by piece. Lu Ting walked to a wide stretch of beach, then used a wooden stick to draw the 3 letters SOS in the sand. Since it was meant to be seen by planes in the sky, the 3 letters were super huge. After writing those 3 letters, Lu Ting dragged over many live branches from the edge of the forest. These branches had high moisture content, and once put into the fire, they would produce thick smoke. This was to send a distress signal to the nearby sea, making 2 preparations and giving them a better chance of survival. After finishing, Lu Ting dragged her weary body over to Yifeng's side. Oh my god, Yifeng, I'm exhausted to death. Lu Ting rubbed her waist, her face full of fatigue. There were lots of wood chips and dirt on her face, making her look like a refugee beauty, pitifully charming. Are there flowers on my face? Why are you staring at me? Seeing Yifeng looking at her face, Lu Ting asked. There are no flowers on your face, Yifeng replied. Then I must look a mess, right? Lu Ting asked. Yes, you do look a mess, but you still look very beautiful. Hee, I didn't expect you could tell the truth too. I thought you only knew how to tell lies. Lu Ting smiled sweetly, then wiped her face. As a beauty, one must maintain a good image at all times. You're not on guard against me anymore? Yifeng asked. He remembered that last night, this school belle had been guarding against him as if he were a thief. A forcibly twisted melon is not sweet. I trust you, so I'm not on guard anymore. Lu Ting said. Although a forced melon is not sweet, as long as I'm happy, who cares whether the melon is sweet or not? Yifeng smiled and said, Can't be bothered with you. Lu Ting pouted and turned to walk toward the seawater, probably wanting to wash up. Forgot to remind you, we're working together with divided tasks. My task is done, so the task of smoking the wild boar meat is up to you. Lu Ting did not forget to remind him. I know. Yifeng nodded, indicating that there was no problem, because Lu Ting had indeed done a lot. Splash, splash. At dusk, on the boundless sea, waves rolled one after another, and layers of surging seawater kept washing onto the beach. Beneath the beautiful sunset, by the blue sea, Lu Ting, with her jet-black hair draped over her shoulders, walked on the soft beach, leaving little footprints in the golden sand. Dusk, the sea, the beach, a beauty. The scene before his eyes was very, very beautiful, so beautiful that it was hard to describe. Looking at the school belle's beautiful figure, Yifeng actually became somewhat entranced. Although back in college, he had never secretly admired the school belle. He also liked beautiful women and longed for a chance to share the beautiful scenery on the beach with one. Hey, is anybody there? We've drifted onto a deserted island and need rescue. Standing in the shallows, Lu Ting looked at the sea and shouted loudly. She was not really calling for help, just wanting to vent the irritation in her heart. After all, even a fool knew that calling out with her voice was useless. Hey, we need rescue. At the seaside at dusk, Lu Ting's cries for help kept coming. About 2 hours later, Yifeng finally cut off all the wild boar meat and then put it on a rack over the fire to smoke. Tomorrow, if he added some sea salt, he could make the wild boar meat into cured meat, which would be easy to preserve. By the seaside, Lu Ting bent over to wash her feet and to wash all the dirt off her body. It was almost dark. The sunset had already fallen, and a crescent moon rose. There would be moonlight tonight. It was about to get dark. Looking at the sun that was about to disappear, Yifeng actually felt a bit expectant, because after dark, he and Lu Ting would be staying in a 10-square-meter thatched hut. The space was so small, and there were only the 2 of them. How romantic. Lu Ting was playing on the beach when she suddenly stared blankly at Yifeng. Seeing her looking at him, Yifeng thought to himself, could it be that the school belle had taken a liking to him and become infatuated with him, which was why she was staring at him blankly? But that didn't seem very likely. After all, they had only just been in contact for 1 day. And although they had been classmates before, among the hundreds of people in the school, to the school belle, he was merely one of the many inconspicuous losers. Yifeng, let me tell you some unfortunate news. With a troubled expression, Lu Ting suddenly said, "What news?" Yifeng remained calm, secretly guessing that today wasn't the end of the month, so what bad news could the school bell possibly have? Woo-woo, I accidentally stepped into a crack in the reef, and my foot got stuck. I can't pull it out. Lu Ting looked embarrassed, perhaps because she was afraid of being mocked by Yifeng. Oh, after hearing this news, Yifeng therefore nodded. Don't you have anything to say to me? Or aren't you planning to come over and help me? Lu Ting was very depressed. She had thought that after learning this news, Yifeng would definitely run over quickly to help her. But unexpectedly, Yifeng just stood there calmly. Did he have any sympathy at all? Hello, beautiful school bell. I believe you can definitely do it. I have reason to believe you can save yourself, Yifeng said. I can't. Lu Ting was a little anxious. Her foot stuck in the crack of the reef felt very uncomfortable. Yet that damned Yifeng actually showed no tenderness toward a woman. I believe you can definitely do it, Yifeng continued. Sob sob. Lu Ting acted cute and said pitifully, Classmate Yifeng, please help me. If you don't help me, I'll die? Can you bear to see me die? You even got stuck just washing your feet. You're really something. Yifeng smiled, then strode over, worried that Lu Ting was uncomfortable. What kind of logic is that? Even the smartest person can trip while walking. Lu Ting argued. The icy seawater kept washing up onto the beach. Yifeng came to Lu Ting's side and saw that her fair ankle was stuck in a crack between the rocks. This was a dark reef area. Lu Ting had accidentally stepped into a palm-sized crevice. If she forcibly pulled it out, it would definitely hurt a lot, and she didn't have the courage to do it. Yifeng, what should I do? It hurts so much. Lu Ting felt so aggrieved she wanted to cry, and was also afraid Yifeng would mock her. This rock crevice is part of a solid stone. If we smash the rock open, we'll definitely hurt your foot. Yifeng thought and said, No, we can't smash it. It would definitely hurt my foot. Lu Ting shook her head anxiously and refused. But other than smashing the rock, I can't think of any other way. Yifeng was in a bit of a dilemma. Please, please, you have to think of a way. Lu Ting put her hands together and begged pitifully. Saving you is actually easy, but the method isn't very nice. I hope you won't get angry. Yifeng said, As long as you can get me out, I'd be endlessly grateful. How could I possibly get angry? Lu Ting just wanted to pull her foot out quickly, because it was getting dark, and she didn't want to stand here all night. Hee. Yifeng squatted on the beach, suddenly looked up and gave Lu Ting an evil smile, then reached out and pulled at her jeans. Lu Ting's jeans were immediately pulled down a few inches. Your skin is pretty fair. Ah. Lu Ting screamed in fright and hurriedly stepped back a few paces, saying angrily, Yifeng, what are you doing? If you dare try anything, I'll never speak to you again, and I'll never forgive you. Yifeng spread his hands and said, I knew you'd get angry. Only then did Lu Ting realize she had misunderstood Yifeng. Without using that method, her foot wouldn't have come out in her panic. Humph, pervert, I'm not going to thank you. Lu Ting pretended to be angry, then touched her ankle. The skin had been rubbed off and it hurt a little, but she was safe now. I never expected your gratitude, but you can keep staying stuck there and watch the sea all night. After saying this, Yifeng returned to the campfire, increasing the smoke from the fire and continuing to smoke the wild boar meat. Lu Ting pursed her lips and walked to the rock crevice where she had been stuck, raising her fair, slender foot to try it out, then immediately pulled it back again and muttered to herself, Am I stupid? I finally got out, so I don't want to get stuck again. It's getting dark. The sun disappeared at the edge where the sea met the sky, and a crescent moon slowly rose. By the sea, the cool sea breeze kept blowing in. Lu Ting stood outside the thatched hut, gazing into the distance, the pale moonlight shining on her as if draping her in a mysterious veil. Under the moon, she was beautiful, very beautiful. Yifeng walked to Lu Ting's side and asked, What are you thinking about? I'm worried about those classmates and teachers. I don't know how many are still alive, and I don't know when the rescue team will come. Lu Ting was in low spirits, her voice subdued. We can't worry about that much right now. All we can do is protect ourselves and wait for the rescue team to arrive. Yifeng said, That's all we can do. Lu Ting nodded. It was night. Yifeng pointed at the moon in the night sky. Lu Ting looked up at the moonlight. Her eyes were bright, and her eyelashes were long. Her eyes, like black gemstones, were full of vitality. It was dark, time to rest. After looking at the moon in the sky, Lu Ting felt uneasy. Because the thatched hut was very small, the thought of being alone with Yifeng at night made her a little nervous and somewhat afraid. Yeah, time to rest. I'll sleep in the thatched hut, and you sleep outside, Yifeng said. Aye. Lu Ting's eyes widened. She hadn't expected such a shameless man, actually making a girl sleep outside, and be blown by the wind. Too shameless. Why? Why should I sleep outside while you sleep in the thatched hut? I helped build the hut too. Lu Ting was so angry her stomach hurt. Because I'm in poor health and too frail to stand the wind. If the wind blows on me, I could easily catch a cold, Yifeng replied. Huffed. Lu Ting almost spat blood. Looking at Yifeng's harmless smile, she really wanted to throw back her head and shout to the heavens. Thunder, strike, and kill Yifeng already. Forget it. I'm not arguing with you. Gentlemen first. I'll go in and rest first. Yifeng waved his hand and then entered the thatched hut. Yifeng, I found that you're really too shameless. Why gentlemen first? I refuse to stay outside. Fuming, Lu Ting entered the thatched hut and then sat down on a pile of dry grass in a corner, growing angrier the more she thought about it. Yifeng smiled faintly and sat by the door of the thatched hut, holding the Qinggang wood to guard against beast attacks. There was a bonfire outside, and the bright flames shone into the hut. In the corner of the hut, Lu Ting was so angry that her body heaved up and down, and her face had darkened with anger. If you're tired from being angry, come sit by my side, and then get some rest early, Yifeng said with a smile. Humph. Lu Ting snorted coldly, turning her head to the side in anger. Yifeng was always provoking her. If I hadn't made you angry, would you have had the nerve to come in and rest? Would you have felt at ease coming in? Yifeng asked. Lu Ting felt that Yifeng was right. She had been standing outside just now, originally too embarrassed to come in, but because she was so angry, she stormed into the thatched hut. She also felt that Yifeng was different from other people. Back at school, many boys had flattered and tried to please her, and their purpose was very clear. But Yifeng got along with her in a different way, always making her fall for it and lower her guard. Don't curl up in the corner. You'd better stay close to me, otherwise it won't be safe, Yifeng said. TCH, don't think you can scare me with ghost stories. I already fell for that once last night. I won't be fooled and scared by you again. Lu Ting still sat in the corner, trying to keep some distance. After all, in the dead of night, there were only the two of them in the thatched hut. She felt very awkward and somewhat uneasy. I'm afraid a snake might show up at night. What if some venomous snake climbs up the rocks onto the roof of the thatched hut and suddenly drills through the thatch and falls into your arms? Yifeng said. You, don't mention that thing. I'm most afraid of it. Lu Ting suddenly became very nervous. Rustle, rustle. Suddenly, a rustling sound came from the top of the thatched hut, as if something were crawling there. In fact, it was the sound of the wind moving the thatch. Snake. Yifeng suddenly pointed upward at the roof. Oh my. Lu Ting was so frightened that she hurried over and pressed herself tightly against Yifeng, trembling all over. Haha, don't be afraid. I'll protect you. Yifeng embraced Lu Ting, holding her sideways in his arms. The school beauty's soft, delicate body, along with her breath as fragrant as orchids, felt wonderful, warm, and sweet-smelling. Why you're too mean, always scaring me. If you scare me again, I really won't talk to you anymore. Lu Ting was so angry she was beside herself, wishing she could grab Yifeng by the neck and not let go. The vast pale moonlight shrouded the thatched hut, covering this land and the sea. Inside the hut, Lu Ting fell asleep. Since she was exhausted and sleepy, she quickly drifted into dreamland. Splash, splash. Yifeng lay in the thatched hut, listening to the sound of the tide slowly surging, as well as Lu Ting's steady breathing. His mind was somewhat unsettled. Calm down. Yifeng tried his best to calm himself down. He had not slept at all the previous night, and he had worked hard during the day, so he was also very sleepy. Before he knew it, Yifeng fell asleep. In the dream, he dreamed of the scene when the shipwreck happened. A cruise ship was sailing across the boundless sea, and there were several hundred people on board, most of them teachers and students who had graduated from the finance department. But there were also some wealthy businessmen and outsiders. Crunch, crunch. Bursts of teeth grinding came from the thatched hut. Because the sound was rather loud, Yifeng woke up. After opening his eyes, Yifeng looked at Lu Ting beside him. The teeth grinding was coming from her. He had not expected the campus belle to grind her teeth in her sleep. Her beautiful image was instantly ruined. Something was wrong. Yifeng quickly got up and walked to Lu Ting's side. Not only was she grinding her teeth, she was also making sounds of discomfort. Lu Ting. Yifeng called out, but Lu Ting kept grinding her teeth, making distressed sounds. Yifeng crouched down and placed his hand on her forehead. So cold. The moment he put his hand on Lu Ting's forehead, Yifeng felt as if he were touching cold iron, without the slightest warmth. Lu Ting had a high fever, and a severe one at that. With an ordinary high fever, the whole body burns hot. That situation is still manageable and not very serious. But once the whole body turns cold, it is a sign that the high fever has become severe. When a person's fever is around 38 degrees, the body feels hot. Once it exceeds 39 or 40 degrees, the whole body turns cold. Lu Ting, wake up, wake up. Yifeng anxiously shook Lu Ting, not daring to let her keep sleeping. Oh. Lu Ting trembled, her whole body curled up together. She looked pitiful. Lu Ting, wake up. Yifeng called out loudly. Lu Ting slowly woke up. Her eyes were dim, and in a trembling voice she said, Yifeng, my head feels like it's splitting apart. I feel terrible. I think I'm going to die. Don't talk nonsense. You won't die, and I won't let you die either, Yifeng said sternly. Yifeng, I really feel awful, so miserable. I've never suffered like this before. I might not be able to hold on. If I really die, please take my ashes back. I don't want to be buried alone on this deserted island, because I'm afraid of the dark, and I'm afraid of loneliness. Lu Ting's voice was weak and desolate. But when people are sick and suffering, they are always emotionally fragile, not to mention that their current situation was terrible. Don't talk nonsense. I won't let you die. Even if you were going to die, it would be from me angering you to death, not from illness, Yifeng said with heartache. Lu Ting curled up her body, trembling as she said in discomfort, You always make me angry. I'm almost dying, and you still want to anger me to death. Stop talking, get up and sit up, stay awake. I'm going out to find herbs for you. Yifeng quickly took off his outer clothing and personally draped it over Lu Ting, but Lu Ting's whole body was limp and weak, without a bit of strength, so she couldn't sit up steadily. Yifeng had her lean her back against the stone wall. In this thatched hut, the wall above 1.5 meters was a mix of wood and thatch, while everything below 1.5 meters was all stone. Lu Ting, remember what I say. Whatever you do, don't fall asleep. You must stay awake. I'm going into the forest to find herbs for you. Yifeng patted Lu Ting's face to keep her conscious. The reason he didn't dare let her fall asleep was that a high fever could worsen faster during sleep, and if she slipped into a coma and couldn't wake up, then if a wild beast appeared, even if it smashed open the stone door, Lu Ting wouldn't notice, which was very dangerous. Yifeng, don't go. The forest is very dangerous at night. Lu Ting struggled to open her eyes, feeling as if everything around her was spinning, as though the earth were flying in the sky. Your condition is very bad. I have to go find herbs for you. Remember, wait for me. Wait for me to come back. Yifeng continued patting Lu Ting's cheeks, wanting to keep her more awake. Then you must be careful. Go early and come back early. If you can't find the herbs, wait until daylight before looking again. Lu Ting's voice was broken and weak. I'll definitely come back as soon as possible. Sing to stay awake until I return. Yifeng didn't dare let Lu Ting just sit there like that, because she could easily lose consciousness. I don't have the strength, and I don't know what song to sing. Lu Ting leaned limply against the stone wall, not even having the strength to keep her eyes open. She was extremely uncomfortable and weak, and her mind was muddled, so she didn't know what to sing. Just recite, Yifeng is the most handsome, my true love, 1,000 times, until I come back. Yifeng said. Lu Ting was muddle-headed, but she still began to recite. Yifeng is the most handsome, my true love. Yifeng is the most handsome, my true love. Remember, you have to say it 1,000 times, stay awake, watch out for wild beasts, and wait for me to come back. Yifeng handed a wooden stick to Lu Ting, then picked up another piece of green steelwood and quickly left. After walking out of the thatched hut, he blocked the main door, picked up a torch from the ground, and quickly headed toward the forest. Yifeng is the most handsome, my true love. From the thatched hut behind him, Lu Ting was still reciting it. If she was awake tomorrow and still remembered this, who knew what she would think? Under the moonlight, Yifeng strode swiftly, moving quickly through the night, and soon arrived at the edge of the forest. To find herbs, he had to enter the forest. Yifeng did not hesitate in the slightest. Holding a torch in one hand and gripping the green steelwood in the other, he resolutely entered the woods. This forest was very large. Even in daytime, its end could not be seen, and after entering at night, it was even more pitch black, as if boundless and endless. He had no idea what kind of hellish place this was. There are many herbs that can treat a high fever, at least hundreds of them. As the saying goes, there are 400 kinds of illness and 800 kinds of medicine. Yifeng had lived in the countryside since childhood and often went into the mountains, so he knew many medicinal herbs. In the pitch-black forest, he braved the danger and endured the loneliness, anxiously searching everywhere. This forest was lush with abundant vegetation, so medicinal herbs were not lacking. About half an hour later, Yifeng found several kinds of herbs that could treat a high fever. hyssop, licorice root, and plantain, among others. Plantain can not only treat a high fever and clear heat and toxins, but can also be eaten as a wild vegetable to stave off hunger. After finding several herbs, Yifeng prepared to return, but suddenly there was a disturbance behind him. Rustle, swish. A large tree behind him suddenly shook, as if someone were shaking it. What is that? Yifeng turned around anxiously, looking behind him with tension and fear. It had to be a large wild beast to make such a huge commotion. In the forest, Yifeng anxiously looked behind him. There had to be a large wild beast there to make such a big commotion, but when he turned around, everything behind him was silent and still. Silence. The forest was utterly silent, so quiet you could hear a pin drop, as if there had never been any sound at all. Could it have been an illusion? Yifeng murmured to himself, then secretly shook his head. It couldn't have been an illusion, because the commotion just now had been very loud. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Rustle, rustle, rustle. A cool breeze blew through the forest, and the trees swayed gently. Yifeng slowly backed away, preparing to leave quickly. It was too dangerous here. Whoosh. A black shadow suddenly shot out, moving with incredible speed, like a gust of wind. Yifeng was terrified and quickly dodged. Whoosh. The black shadow swept past him with a fierce gust of wind, attacking swiftly from his side before hiding in the grass ahead. What on earth was that? Yifeng was shocked. The black shadow was agile and incredibly fast. It was definitely not a tiger, nor a black bear, because although a tiger is fast, it isn't that agile, while a black bear moves rather clumsily and couldn't possibly be that fast. Yifeng felt very unsafe. He looked up at the tree trunk above, then leaped upward. Up. Light as a swallow, Yifeng landed on a tree trunk, then anxiously looked around. Since he had grown up in Yi family village, where the whole village valued martial arts, Yifeng had practiced since childhood and had developed nimble skills. What the hell are you? Come out. Yifeng let out an angry roar to bolster his courage. Squeak. Suddenly, the black shadow hidden in the forest darted out again, quickly leaping up to attack Yifeng. Huh. Yifeng swiftly flipped downward in midair, swinging the torch in his hand. Bang. A loud crash rang out as the torch struck the black shadow heavily. Squeak. The black shadow let out a strange cry, then quickly vanished into the forest, and Yifeng's torch also went out. What exactly was that thing? Yifeng was drenched in sweat. Because the black shadow had been so fast and the surroundings were dimly lit, he hadn't seen it clearly and had no idea what kind of monster it was. This place was too dangerous. Gripping his wooden stick and carrying the herbs, Yifeng slowly withdrew from the forest. More than 10 minutes later, he finally reached the beach, where a gust of cold wind blew over him. And, drenched in sweat, he finally let out a sigh of relief. There were no trees or obstacles on the beach, making it hard for that thing to hide, so it was relatively safe and not too dangerous. Worried about Lu Ting's safety, Yifeng quickly ran toward the thatched hut. Crackle, crackle. The bonfire in front of the hut crackled as the firewood burned. Lu Ting, Yifeng called out, and quickly walked toward the thatched hut, afraid something had happened to Lu Ting. Yifeng. Lu Ting's weak voice came from inside the hut. She looked utterly feeble, and said weakly, Yifeng, you scare me to death. I thought you had gotten lost and couldn't find your way back. Thud. After saying this, Lu Ting collapsed helplessly to the ground. Lu Ting. Yifeng called out and strode forward, pushing aside the stone slab and entering the hut. He touched Lu Ting's forehead. It was cold, even colder than before. Her high fever had worsened again. I'll go make medicine for you. He walked out of the hut, preparing to make medicine for Lu Ting. Although there was no iron pot or clay pot, he could use a tree tube to boil the medicine. Even a sheet of paper, as long as it is filled with water, won't be burned through. You can even boil water in a sheet of paper, let alone a tree tube, which is sturdier than paper. On the icy seashore, Yifeng squatted on the beach washing the herbs. There is not much fresh water, so he could only use seawater to wash the herbs, and then use fresh water to brew the medicine. After finishing, Yifeng returned to the fire and used tree tubes to brew the medicine. 2 tree tubes, 1 for the medicine, and 1 to boil water. A person with a high fever needs to drink more boiled water. The outside of the tree tube was scorched and deformed, but because there was water inside, it did not burn. Yifeng sat by the fire and waited. A few minutes later, the water in one of the tree tubes was ready. Yifeng carefully picked up the tree tube, mixed in some cold water, and after the water was no longer hot, he returned to the hut to feed Lu Ting some water. Lu Ting, drink some water. Yifeng helped Lu Ting up, let her lean against his chest, and then carefully fed her water. Mom, Dad, I feel so awful. I miss you so much. I'm going to die. In her delirium, Lu Ting sorrowfully called out for her parents. Sigh. Yifeng felt somewhat distressed. This school beauty had still been so stubborn and unwilling to admit defeat during the day, gathering a lot of wood by herself and building the hut with him. But when she got sick at night, she was very fragile. But when sick, everyone becomes very fragile. Even men are fragile too. After Lu Ting drank a lot of water, Yifeng let her lie flat on the ground. Rest first. I'll go prepare your medicine. Don't worry, I won't let you die from illness. After returning to the fire, Yifeng stayed by it brewing the medicine. Tonight the moon was waning. The crescent moon hung high over the mountain, and under the vast pale moonlight, Yifeng sat quietly by the fire. 10 minutes later, the herbs were finally done brewing, and a strong smell of traditional Chinese medicine filled the air. Yifeng carefully took out the tree tube and placed it on the ground to cool. After the herbal medicine was no longer hot, Yifeng picked up the tree tube and entered the hut. Lu Ting lay among the dry grass, shivering all over without stop. Lu Ting, drink the medicine. Yifeng helped Lu Ting up and let her sit reclined in his arms. Cold, I'm cold. Lu Ting was trembling all over, clenching her teeth, shivering as she said, Yifeng, I'm really so cold. Hurry and put me on the fire to warm up. Put her on the fire to warm up? Yifeng smiled bitterly. This school beauty was really delirious. How could she be put on the fire? She's not a suckling pig for roasting. And if he really put her on the fire, she would definitely get a skin disease. Drink the medicine, be good. Yifeng carefully fed Lu Ting the medicine. It was also his first time taking care of a beautiful woman, so he felt a little unaccustomed to it. After Lu Ting finished the herbal medicine, Yifeng laid her down among the dry grass, hoping the medicine would work. If after drinking these herbs, Lu Ting's high fever still did not go down, then there was nothing Yifeng could do. But it should work, because back in the countryside before, many people with high fevers drank these herbs. So tired, Yifeng lay in the hut, so exhausted that his waist and back ached. He had gone almost 1 full day and 2 nights without rest, and he had worked very hard during the day as well, so it was a bit too much to bear. Because he was very tired, Yifeng lay on the ground resting with his eyes closed, and before he knew it, he drifted into sleep again. This sleep was really comfortable. Early the next morning, when the sky was just beginning to brighten, Yifeng slowly opened his eyes. It's daylight. He turned back to look behind him and found that the school beauty was gone. Lu Ting. Yifeng quickly stood up, then ran out of the hut, anxiously looking around everywhere. But there was still no sign of Lu Ting. She seemed to have vanished into thin air. Lu Ting. Yifeng called out again. On the beautiful beach, only his echo kept returning, but there was still no response from Lu Ting. What's going on? Where did she go? Yifeng was frantic with it, afraid something had happened to Lu Ting. Could the campus belle have been eaten by a wild beast? But that didn't seem very likely, because the hut's door was blocked by a stone slab. If a wild beast had entered the hut, it definitely would have made a huge commotion, and the noise would have woken him up. Even if a wild beast really had entered the hut, it would have attacked him first, rather than attacking Lu Ting first, because he was lying in front of Lu Ting. Lu Ting. Yifeng continued calling anxiously, then quickly searched the surrounding area. He was afraid something had happened to the campus belle, because on this island, perhaps they were the only 2 living people. If something happened to Lu Ting, he would be very lonely alone on this island, and loneliness was the most terrifying thing. Lu Ting. By the vast and boundless seaside, Yifeng called anxiously. He was worried something had happened to Lu Ting. Who knew where this campus belle had run off to? After waking up, he couldn't see any sign of her. Yifeng, I'm here. Lu Ting quickly jogged over and said apologetically. Sorry, I had to go to the bathroom just now, so I left the hut. Seeing that Lu Ting was fine, Yifeng finally felt relieved. Don't go far from the hut in the future. This deserted island is too dangerous, Yifeng warned. Okay, I understand. Lu Ting walked over with a smile. Since her body had recovered, she was in good spirits. Is your fever gone? Yifeng asked. It's gone, thank you. Lu Ting was sincerely grateful. If Yifeng hadn't taken care of her, something probably would have happened to her last night, because with a persistent high fever, it was easy to damage the brain and put her life in danger. No need to thank me, Yifeng said. I didn't expect you to be so caring. Lu Ting looked at Yifeng with a smile. After what happened last night, she had completely let down her guard around Yifeng, knowing that he wouldn't make a move on her. I'm just afraid something might happen to you. I'd be very bored alone on a deserted island, Yifeng said. So stubborn. Lu Ting smiled faintly, but she felt Yifeng was different from other people. If it were other men, they definitely would have claimed credit in front of her, talking about how hard it was and so on, hinting subtly at wanting some kind of reward. But after Yifeng saved her, he still wanted nothing in return. Toot toot. Suddenly, the sound of a ship's horn came from the vast and boundless sea. It was the sound of a ship. A ship. Yifeng and Lu Ting spoke in unison without prior agreement, then turned excitedly to look at the sea. Sure enough, on the vast and boundless sea, a large ship had really appeared. Yifeng, it's a cruise ship, we're saved. Lu Ting cheered with joy, excitedly waving her hands. Hurry and send a distress signal. Yifeng said happily. Okay. Lu Ting hurriedly ran to the fire and threw the branches on the ground into the bonfire. Because the branches were very damp, thick smoke rose up. Yifeng also quickly rushed over to help. The two of them threw bundles of branches into the bonfire, and the dense black smoke rose into the air like a flying dragon, spreading across the sky. Hey, save us, save us. After throwing all the branches into the bonfire, Lu Ting quickly ran to the seaside and stood on the beach, waving constantly. Yifeng also grabbed a branch and kept waving it, trying as much as possible to attract the attention of that ship. Unfortunately, the ship didn't notice them and gradually moved farther away, becoming more and more distant from their sight. Hey, hey. Lu Ting stood on the beach calling anxiously, her voice already hoarse, but the cruise ship still kept moving farther and farther away. Yifeng increased the amount of smoke from the bonfire. With such dense smoke, it could be seen even from dozens of li away, yet the cruise ship still couldn't see them, and in the end it disappeared before their eyes. Hey, save us, save us. Watching the cruise ship disappear, Lu Ting crouched by the sea and cried in despair. She had collapsed. She had just seen hope, but now she was in despair again. The huge blow filled Lu Ting with immense grief. If the ending is despair, it would be better to have never had hope at all, because it gave them hope, only to leave them in despair again in the end. It was too painful. Sob, sob, sob. Lu Ting crouched by the sea, crying sorrowfully. Her voice was full of desolation and helplessness. Splash. The sea breeze drifted in gently, and in the wind, Lu Ting's voice sounded utterly mournful. By the beautiful seaside, the crying beauty looked like a woman with nowhere to call home. Although Yifeng was also very disappointed, he still pulled himself together, slowly walked to Lu Ting's side, and comforted her. Stop crying, we still have a chance. Sob, sob, sob. Yifeng, will we be trapped here until we die? I miss my parents at home, and I'm afraid they'll worry about me. Tears welled in Lu Ting's eyes, and she cried as if she were made of tears. We won't be trapped here until we die, because the rescue team will arrive soon. This is the age of technology. The relevant authorities have probably already dispatched helicopters and ships to search for and rescue us. Yifeng comforted her. Really? Lu Ting asked. I won't lie to you. Think about it. A cruise ship accident with hundreds of casualties will definitely attract global attention. Someone will surely come to rescue us. Yifeng continued to comfort her. Thank you. Thank you for comforting me. Lu Ting wiped away her tears and accepted reality. After all, that cruise ship had already disappeared. Splash. Cold seawater kept washing onto the beach. Looking at the vast, boundless sea, Yifeng was deeply worried and full of concerns. Why hadn't that cruise ship noticed their distress signal? That didn't seem very likely, because the thick smoke had risen into the sky like a long dragon. Such a huge cloud of smoke could be seen even from dozens of miles away at sea. But that ship still sailed away. Why exactly was that? Could it be that there were valuables on the cruise ship, and the captain didn't want to waste time or invite unnecessary trouble, so he ignored their plea for help? At the seaside, Lu Ting regained her composure and was no longer as despairing as before. Have you ever heard the story of a 60-year-old man and an 18-year-old girl stranded on a deserted island? Yifeng suddenly asked. No, I haven't. Lu Ting shook her head, indicating that she had never heard of it, but she was very curious why Yifeng had suddenly brought this up. Actually, compared to that 18-year-old girl, you're already very lucky. You didn't get the short end of the stick, because I'm not 60, and I'm quite handsome too, haha. Yifeng said with a smile. Humph, getting carried away. Lu Ting wiped away the last tear, too annoyed to say anything. Cheer up, don't be negative. We still have a chance. Believe me, I will definitely bring you back safely. Yifeng stood up, his deep gaze fixed on the sea ahead. He firmly believed that they would make it back alive, that they would definitely return alive to their hometown. Okay, I believe you. What should we do next? Lu Ting asked. First we'll get some breakfast, and afternoon we'll use sea salt to cure the wild boar meat. For now, we need to find ways to survive. Because only by staying alive can we wait for the rescue team to arrive, Yifeng said. They had dried sea salt yesterday at noon, so there should be some results today. Okay, I'll listen to you. We'll survive together. Lu Ting stood up and followed Yifeng back to the seaside. Yifeng firmly believed that they would make it back alive. As long as they held fast to that belief and worked hard to solve their survival difficulties, they would have a chance to wait for the rescue team's arrival. After returning to the fire, the two of them grilled wild boar meat to eat. Yifeng planned that after breakfast, once they had cured the wild boar meat at noon, they would walk along the coastline to see if they could encounter other survivors. Many hands make light work. If they could meet other survivors, they could survive together and deal with the crisis. But although there is strength in numbers, there is also more trouble. If some survivors have bad intentions, disaster could easily happen. Because this is an island, a deserted place with no one around and no constraints at all. So in a place like this, the greed in human nature is easily stirred up. After the two finished eating, it was already noon. The sunlight in the sky was very strong, so Yifeng wove 2 straw hats from tree branches to avoid getting sunburned and peeling. The two came to the place where they had dried salt yesterday and saw that the rock pit was covered with layer upon layer of white sea salt. But this sea salt had not undergone any special treatment, nor had it been filtered or otherwise processed, so it was bad for human health. But staying alive was already difficult now, so how could they worry about health? They could only try to consume as little as possible. Yifeng, sea salt. Lu Ting pointed at the sea salt in the rock pit, and her mood was much better than before. Yifeng nodded slightly, then clasped his hands behind his back and said like a leader, "Go collect that sea salt, and then salt the wild boar meat." "Why should I? How dare you order me, the school beauty, around?" Lu Ting clenched her little fists, showing her dissatisfaction and wanting to protest. "Because I am the king of the island, so you have to listen to me," Yifeng said. If you're the king of the island, then I'm the queen here." Lu Ting was disdainful. "Queen?" Yifeng gave a mischievous smile. She actually wanted to be the queen. "Bah, slip of the tongue, slip of the tongue." Lu Ting raised her hand and waved her slender fingers, then corrected herself. "I am the empress here, so you have to listen to me. Let's play rock, paper, scissors. 1 round decides the winner," Yifeng said. "Okay." Lu Ting readily agreed, and the two prepared to decide the winner with rock, paper, scissors. Yifeng clenched his fist, deliberately letting his middle and index fingers protrude slightly, pretending he was about to throw scissors. Lu Ting was secretly overjoyed and quickly threw rock, but Yifeng threw paper. "Haha, you lost." Yifeng laughed. "No, you were too sly." Lu Ting wanted to go back on it, but being unreasonable was a beauty's nature. "A bet is a bet, no going back on it," Yifeng said very seriously. Lu Ting pouted and walked complainingly to the rock pit. While collecting sea salt, she muttered in a low voice, "What a bitter life. What a bitter life, stranded on a deserted island and actually meeting a lazy good-for-nothing who is always thinking about ordering people around while he himself doesn't want to do anything." After Lu Ting grumbled a few times, Yifeng walked over to collect sea salt, preparing to salt the wild boar meat himself. "Oh my, the sun has risen in the west. Since when did you become so diligent?" Lu Ting asked deliberately. "Actually, I'm very hardworking. You just haven't noticed it." Yifeng laughed. "The laziest person in the world is you," Lu Ting argued on purpose. After collecting the sea salt, Yifeng returned to the fire and spread all the sea salt over the wild boar meat. With sea salt curing and smoking, the wild boar meat could be preserved for a long time. Back when he lived in the countryside, every household in the village used this method to cure pork, and it could be kept for several years. But considering the climate here, it would probably only last for 1 month. But 1 month was already enough. Yifeng estimated that the rescue team would appear within a week at most. Lu Ting rolled up her sleeves, preparing to help. "You rest at the side. Leave this kind of thing to me. Be careful not to dirty your hands," Yifeng said. "If you do it yourself, you'll have all you need. I don't want people to mistake me for dead weight." Lu Ting paid no attention to the grease and squatted on the ground with Yifeng to salt the wild boar meat. An hour later, the two finally finished. They prepared to walk along the coastline. They wanted to look for other survivors. There had been several hundred people on the cruise ship, so perhaps others were lucky enough to be washed onto the beach, and perhaps some supplies had also been washed ashore. Right now, aside from a lighter, the two of them had no supplies at all. If they could find important supplies from the cruise ship, it would be of tremendous help for survival on the island. Splash! The sea breeze kept blowing, and layers upon layers of white waves continuously surged onto the beach. Yifeng and Lu Ting walked along the beach. The island's coastline was very, very long. Probably impossible to finish walking in even 2 days, and they couldn't go too far from the camp. Strange. Looking at that long coastline, Yifeng frowned and pondered. What's wrong? Lu Ting asked. Yifeng said, this island is very large and has such a long coastline, so why is no one living here? In today's technological age, islands suitable for human habitation are all fiercely contested, yet there isn't a single trace of human habitation on this island. Lu Ting shook her head and said, that is indeed very strange. This island's coastline is very long, and it's circular too, probably spanning hundreds of li in circumference. Such a large island, with vegetation so lush, yet no one lives here. It's as if people all over the world have forgotten this place. In this age where every inch of land is fought over, let alone such a large island, even a tiny rocky islet jutting out of the sea, would cause countless countries to fight fiercely over it, even going to great lengths and not hesitating to start wars. But this island is too bizarre. There are actually no human footprints here. The more Yifeng thought about it, the more he felt something was wrong. Wow. Suddenly, Lu Ting ran over in delight. She ran to the base of a reef and picked up a dark object. It was a frying pan. Yifeng, I found a frying pan. Lu Ting waved the frying pan in her hand, dancing with joy. On this island, a frying pan was extremely important, so important that it couldn't even be measured in money. This is a supply item from the cruise ship. After the cruise ship capsized, the waves rushed into the cabin and swept the frying pan onto the beach. Yifeng, I'm pretty lucky, aren't I? Lu Ting beamed with joy, revealing charming dimples on her face. She looked very, very beautiful when she smiled, as beautiful as a princess of the sea. Lu Ting, your luck really is good. Let's keep looking. Maybe there are other supplies too. Yifeng ran over and said happily. Lu Ting nodded excitedly and said, let's keep looking, but this frying pan is mine. Yours, it's all yours. Yifeng couldn't be bothered to argue with her. After all, what was hers was practically his too. With a frying pan, our life will be much more convenient from now on. Lu Ting showed her white teeth, looking as happy as a princess. Besides making life more convenient, you can also use the frying pan to hit me. Yifeng said, why would I use a frying pan to hit you? Lu Ting tilted her head, her beautiful eyes looking at Yifeng. Red Wolf always uses a frying pan to hit Grey Wolf. Yifeng said with a smile. Lu Ting rolled her eyes and said irritably, a frying pan is so precious. How could I bear to use it to hit you? I'd only use a wooden stick or smash you with a rock. You're too cruel, aren't you? Yifeng clutched his heart, showing that he was heartbroken. Now you know how formidable I am, right? So don't provoke me or make me angry in the future, okay? Lu Ting said smugly. After finding a frying pan, this campus belle had actually gotten carried away, like being given a feather and treating it as a command arrow. The two continued searching along the seaside for supplies and other survivors, but after walking for an hour, they still hadn't found any supplies at all. It was as if, among all the supplies from the cruise ship, only this frying pan had been washed onto the beach. Yifeng, Lu Ting, is that you? Just as the two were about to return to the camp, a girl's call came from behind them. Yifeng and Lu Ting turned around and saw a girl standing beneath the dark reef. The girl was about 1.7 meters tall, with wavy hair dyed a bright golden blonde, dressed in gaudy colors, looking quite fashionable. Jinfeng, is that you? When she saw the girl, Lu Ting was a little surprised, not expecting that she was still alive. Jinfeng, so it's you. Yifeng was also somewhat surprised. He hadn't expected to run into Jinfeng. This female classmate was still alive. Yifeng, Lu Ting, that's wonderful, sob. I actually ran into you. Jinfeng was very excited, but she didn't run over. Instead, she leaned against the reef, perhaps too weak to walk. Jinfeng was also a student in the university's finance department, but she had a bad reputation. It was said that in pursuit of a wealthy life, she often frequented high-end places. It was said that a 60-year-old man had been involved with Jinfeng for more than half a year, and that old man was in real estate. But these were only Jinfeng's private affairs and had nothing to do with outsiders. Yifeng, Lu Ting, that's wonderful. I didn't expect you to still be alive. After Yifeng and Lu Ting walked over, Jinfeng smiled happily. It's great to see you. How did you survive? Yifeng asked. Lu Ting also looked at Jinfeng curiously. Seeing how utterly exhausted she was, she guessed that she had suffered a lot. At the time, I was on the deck looking at the sea when suddenly fierce winds and huge waves appeared. I anxiously ran toward the cabin, but unfortunately the waves were too fast and instantly swept me into the sea. I thought I was done for. but unexpectedly, I was carried onto the beach. As Jean Feng recalled what had happened, her face was full of fear and lingering dread. It's good that you're alive. Didn't you run into any other survivors? Yifeng asked. No, Jean Feng said weakly and with effort. After I woke up, I was tired, hungry, and very thirsty, so I went into the forest to look for something to eat. But then, what happened then? Yifeng asked. Fear filled Jean Feng's eyes as she said nervously. Just a few hours after entering the forest, I ran into a python. That python was huge, and it scared me so much that I immediately fled the forest and returned to the beach by the sea. So after regaining consciousness, Jean Feng, thirsty and hungry, had gone into the forest to look for water and food, only to run into a python, which frightened her so badly that she hurried back to the beach. Because it was very hot, she hid under this reef to rest, and later ran into Yifeng and Lu Ting. As a weak woman, encountering a python in the forest must have terrified her. Yifeng, Lu Ting, there are pythons in this forest, and that python was huge, really huge, very long. Jean Feng gestured nervously, indicating just how enormous the python was. But this forest truly was dangerous. Last night, when Yifeng entered the forest to look for herbs, he encountered a dark beast. He had no idea what it was, but it was very fast and moved very nimbly. If Yifeng hadn't practiced martial arts since childhood and had such good skills, he probably would already be dead. It's good that you're okay, Lu Ting said. Yifeng, Lu Ting, how did you two meet? And are there any other survivors here? Jean Feng asked. Other than you, we haven't met any other survivors. Yifeng roughly told her about how he met Lu Ting, but didn't go into too much detail. There was no telling how those classmates, teachers, and other outsiders were doing now, or how many had survived. Jean Feng was panting, and she was very weak. Among the several hundred people on the cruise ship, not all were members of the school, some were outsiders. You must be hungry and thirsty, right? Come back to the camp with us, and we'll give you fresh water and food. Lu Ting said. You have fresh water and food. Jean Feng was very excited. Her mouth was dry, and she was unbearably hungry, desperately wanting fresh water and food. We have fresh water and food in our camp. Lu Ting and Jean Feng slowly walked toward the camp. Yifeng followed behind holding a frying pan and a wooden stick. There was one more survivor now, and fortunately this survivor was Jean Feng. Although Jean Feng did not have a very good reputation, she was a woman and not much of a threat. If some other man had appeared, Yifeng would have had to be on guard, because you can never truly know a person. About an hour later, the three returned to the camp. Wow, water, fresh water, wild boar meat. When she saw the fresh water in the tree tubes, Jean Feng excitedly grabbed one, tilted back her head, and gulped it down nonstop. However, she wasted a lot. Yifeng kept shaking his head as he watched. She really did not understand thrift at all, but seeing how terribly thirsty Jean Feng was, Yifeng did not want to argue about it. After all, there was a water source in the jungle. Ah, that feels so good. It really quenched my thirst. After drinking the water, Jean Feng happily wiped her mouth. In fact, she had wasted most of the water in the tree tube. Wow, there's food too. Jean Feng walked to the campfire, picked up the roasted meat, and gnawed on it with great relish. Since most of the roasted meat was ribs, the parts with bones were harder to chew, so Jean Feng chewed while tossing things aside. Classmate Jean Feng, eat more slowly. Don't throw away what you haven't finished. Try to eat it clean. Lu Ting reminded Jean Feng not to waste food. I'm too hungry. This wild boar meat is so delicious. Yifeng, Lu Ting, you two are amazing. You actually killed a wild boar. Jean Feng ate ravenously while lavishing praise, but she was still throwing away some bones before she had finished gnawing them clean. Jean Feng, don't waste the wild boar meat. You haven't eaten it clean before throwing it away. That's such a pity. Yifeng was very displeased. Yifeng, you're being too stingy. We're classmates. At worst, after I'm full and after we leave this place in the future, I'll just give you money. Jean Feng was unhappy, thinking Yifeng was too stingy. Besides, there was a lot of wild boar meat, so wasting some did not matter. It's fine if it's eaten, but it's a pity to waste it. Yifeng's voice was cold. If this waste continued, the wild boar meat would be eaten up sooner or later. All right, I'm full now, Yifeng. Lu Ting, thank you. I won't forget you. Jean Feng rubbed her hands together, then looked at the hut and said in surprise, wow, there's even a place to rest and sleep. I'm sleepy. Can I go sleep in the hut? You can go rest in the hut, but after you've rested well, you have to work with us. Yifeng planned to let Jean Feng rest for a few hours and then go look for wild vegetables together. Jean Feng stretched lazily, got up, and walked toward the hut.